Have you ever imagined a moment so shocking, so tense, that it feels like the world stops around you? I found myself living one of those moments last Tuesday outside family court while holding my 9-year-old daughter's hand. My daughter, Ella, had just inherited a small check from her late grandfather, something that should have been a quiet, even happy thing, but it turned into the most stressful, terrifying experience of my life. And it all started with my mother-in-law, Margaret, staring down my child with a cold, calculated look in her eyes. She said words I'll never forget. "If you don't share this with your cousin, don't ever call me grandma again." Can you imagine being 9 years old and hearing that from someone who is supposed to love you unconditionally? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. We were standing on the steps outside the courthouse, the sun harsh and glaring, the air thick with tension. Ella was clutching the envelope like it was a lifeline, while Margaret's hand was almost reaching for it, as if daring her to resist. My husband, David, and I were frozen for a moment, unsure whether to step in or let the situation play out for fear of escalating it. And then I noticed the lawyer, Ms. Thompson, pausing mid-step, her brow furrowed. She knew something was about to go terribly wrong. I could feel the shock building, not just in me, but in everyone around us. And the question I kept asking myself was, how could someone in their 60s try to manipulate a 9-year-old like this, with such a casual cruelty? What made it even worse was the timing. We were there for a routine matter, a minor hearing related to guardianship paperwork. Nothing should have been dramatic. And yet, in less than 30 seconds, the tension had escalated to the point where my daughter's trust, her innocence, and her sense of security were all on the line. I wanted to scream at Margaret, to pull Ella into my arms and run, but there was something in my husband's gaze that stopped me. He was calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to intervene. But what would he do? Would he let this intimidation continue, or would he finally confront his mother after years of subtle control and manipulation? Before anyone could react, David spoke. And what he said next made my mother-in-law and father-in-law go pale. Their expressions froze, their confident, controlling facades cracking in an instant. I can still see the exact moment their eyes widened, the color draining from their faces. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever seen a child cornered, as if the world was suddenly against them? That was Ella, my 9-year-old daughter, clutching the envelope that held her inheritance. Her little hands were shaking, her eyes wide, and for a moment, I felt completely powerless. My mother-in-law, Margaret, stepped closer, her voice low but sharp, almost like a predator circling. "Ella," she said, "you need to give this to Sophie. It's only for peace. You don't want to cause trouble, do you?" Her words were sugar-coated threats, and yet their weight crushed my child. Ella's small voice trembled as she said, "No, it's mine." Her defiance was raw, innocent, and courageous, but I could see the fear in her eyes. This was not just about money. This was about control. Margaret's expression darkened. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "If you don't share, don't ever call me grandma again." The words landed like a punch. How could someone say that to a child? And the cruelest part? Margaret looked almost proud of herself, as if she believed that fear could be loyalty. I stepped closer, ready to intervene, but David held me back with a subtle glance. Even the lawyer, Ms. Thompson, had paused mid-step. She was clearly weighing whether to step in or let the situation escalate in front of the court cameras and courthouse steps. Every second stretched, each heartbeat loud and heavy. I could see Ella gripping the envelope tighter, her knuckles white, and I whispered silently to myself, "Stay strong, baby. You have the right to say no." Margaret's eyes flicked to me, then to David, trying to gauge where the real resistance might come from. And then, the impossible happened. She smirked. "Come on, sweetheart, don't make this difficult. It's just one envelope. One little favor for family peace." She leaned closer, almost whispering, as if trying to seal a deal with intimidation. My stomach churned, and I knew Ella could feel the weight of her words. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to act. The air between them was electric. What would he do? Would he let her bully a 9-year-old? Or would he finally stand up, break this cycle of control, and protect his daughter in front of everyone? But before he could even open his mouth, Margaret did something that made my heart stop. And Ella's eyes fill with panic. Have you ever witnessed someone transform in an instant? One moment calm, the next completely unrecognizable because something inside them snapped? That's exactly what happened with my husband, David, as he finally stepped forward. The tension on the courthouse steps was suffocating. Margaret's smirk was still in place, her eyes gleaming with that smug, controlling satisfaction. But the moment David spoke, everything changed. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply looked at Margaret, then Richard, his face calm but unwavering. "Ella keeps what's hers," he said, each word deliberate, measured, carrying a weight that none of us expected. "You will not manipulate her. And if you do, you will no longer have the right to call yourself her family." The words hung in the air like thunder. You could hear a pin drop. Even Miss Thompson, our lawyer, stopped mid-step, her eyebrows raised in stunned approval. Margaret's eyes widened. The smirk faltered. For a moment, she looked small, vulnerable, like someone realizing their carefully constructed power over a child had crumbled. Richard, who had always been quiet in these confrontations, suddenly opened his mouth, but David didn't flinch. "Say what you want, do what you want," David continued. "Ella is 9, and she has the right to keep her inheritance. And if you think you can take it from her, you're mistaken. She is not yours to control." I could see Ella's shoulders relax slightly. Her hands unclenched, though her heart was still racing. I whispered, "You're safe, baby. Daddy's got you." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes, a mix of relief and disbelief. But Margaret wasn't done. No, she had one more card to play, one last attempt to regain control. Her voice dropped to that icy whisper that had dominated our family gatherings for years. "You think this is over? You think one speech changes anything? You will regret this, David." There was menace in her tone, the kind that made your stomach twist. And that's when she did it. She made a move so shocking, so audacious, that I swear even the lawyers had to step back. She reached into her bag and pulled out. Just when I thought the worst had passed, Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out something that made my heart skip a beat. It wasn't money, it wasn't papers, it was a small photo album. She slammed it onto the courthouse steps in front of Ella and me, and her eyes were sharp, calculating. "Do you really think you're safe? Do you think your father's speeches and laws will protect you from family?" she hissed. The album was filled with pictures of Ella as a baby, moments of vulnerability, moments Margaret had documented over the years. It was a silent threat, a reminder that she had always been watching, always controlling, always knowing just how to push her agenda. Ella froze, clutching her inheritance check even tighter. I could feel the tension radiating off her in waves. My stomach twisted as I realized how easily some adults can weaponize a child's innocence. I wanted to scream at Margaret, to make her leave, to make her apologize, but I had to stay calm for Ella. She was looking to me and David for strength, and that's exactly what we needed to give her. David took a step forward, his voice steady but full of authority. "Margaret, this ends now. Ella is 9. She has the right to her inheritance. You will not manipulate her, threaten her, or try to intimidate her ever again. This album, your threats, your demands, they mean nothing here. And if you try anything, I will make sure it has consequences." Margaret's face went pale. Richard looked like he wanted to disappear. The courthouse steps were silent except for Ella's small, shaking breaths. She looked up at her father, and I could see a flicker of courage in her eyes. "It's mine. I earned it. I choose," she said firmly, almost whispering, but loud enough for everyone to hear. For the first time in months, maybe years, Margaret had no power. Her manipulation, her intimidation, all of it failed. Ella smiled faintly, relief washing over her, as if she had just climbed a mountain she didn't know she could. But Margaret wasn't gone yet. She muttered something under her breath, a low, venomous promise that made my blood run cold. And even as we turned to leave, I knew this confrontation wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a battle for respect, for boundaries, for our family's peace. Standing on those courthouse steps, I finally felt the weight lift, not completely, but enough to breathe. Ella, my brave 9-year-old, held her inheritance check close, her small hands trembling, but her eyes shining with pride. She had faced her grandmother's intimidation, her father's protective words backing her, and she had stood her ground. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Sometimes, the courage we need most isn't just in us, it's in the people we protect and love. As we walked away from Margaret and Richard, I glanced back. Their faces were pale, silent, stripped of the arrogance they usually carried. The smug satisfaction, the sense of control, they were gone, replaced by disbelief. I felt a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. Would they respect Ella's choices from now on? Would they learn to honor boundaries, or was this only a temporary victory? The questions lingered, but one thing was clear: we had drawn a line, and no one could erase it. I thought back to that opening moment, the fear, the helplessness, the panic as Margaret cornered Ella. And I remembered asking myself, what would I do if my child was under this kind of pressure? Now I had the answer. I would fight. I would speak. I would protect. And my husband, David, had shown me what standing up could look like in real time: calm, firm, unwavering, and full of love. This story isn't just about a 9-year-old's inheritance. It's about family boundaries, courage, and the lengths some will go to manipulate and control. It's about recognizing abuse for what it is, even when it comes wrapped in the label of family. And it's about showing your children that they have a voice, that their choices matter, and that no one, not even a grandparent, has the right to take that away. So I ask you, the viewer, what would you do if someone tried to manipulate your child like this? Could you speak up? Could you protect them with the same conviction? And if you have a story like this, share it in the comments. Because the truth is, these moments of courage, of standing up, are worth talking about. They're worth remembering. And for Ella, this day will always be remembered as the day she learned that even at 9, she had the power to choose.